Okay, let's talk Second Persian War. An overriding question, something that we're definitely going to develop in class, and boy, it would make a great essay. Basically, who won? Was it the Persians, or was it the Greek city-states? Or maybe we should rephrase that. Did anybody win? Maybe even did anybody lose? So let's take a look at the Second Persian War. We left off last time. Persian defeat, Battle of Marathon. Darius is your emperor of the Persian Empire, and now we have Xerxes, his son, in the Second Persian invasion. Now, in the interim between the First Persian War, the defeat at Marathon, and the Second Persian War, Xerxes' invasion of northern Greece by both land and sea, we have a few things to discuss. In the interim, we have an Egyptian revolt. Remember, Egypt was part of the Persian Empire. Xerxes has to take care of that. You have the Laurium silver mines are discovered. Now, this is going to pump a lot of money into the Persian Empire and is going to fuel, or at least help fuel, Xerxes' invasion. You also have Themistocles and the construction of the Athenian naval fleet. Themistocles, is a great Athenian statesman. He's going to be a great Athenian naval commander as well during the Second Persian War, particularly at the Battle of Salamis. He is attempting to persuade the Athenian councils to build up this fleet. They do not see Persia as a threat. He has to convince them to build it up. He actually says somebody else from their western flank is going to attack, which ultimately is a ruse, but it works. They end up building up their Athenian naval fleet. Triremes were the ships. These rowed ships that were built to ram into your opponent. He's going to be able to build those up. Now, at the same time that the Athenian fleet, these thetes, as they're sometimes referred to, we get the development of Athenian democracy. It is going to continue upon this path set out by your tyrannical reformers. Cleisthenes is going to continue. These ideals of independence are going to play a role in their decision not to bow to Persian authority, particularly under Xerxes. Now, June 480 BCE, we get the Second Persian expedition. Is actually going to catch the Persians off guard. They're not expecting them. Before the First Persian War, Darius had a foothold in northern Greece. Xerxes does not have that luxury. They have been pushed back across to Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, across this very narrow strait known as the Hellespont. They don't think he's going to cross a land army. Now, he knows he can get there using his navy to the Athenian city-states, but they don't think he's going to cross the Hellespont with any sort of large land-based army. Well, he does. Anywhere from 50,000 to 175,000 troops are able to cross this. What they do is they take old decommissioned ships from the Persian Navy and put planks of wood over top of them, and he builds a bridge, strings them together with some rope and chain. It's so strong they can actually have elephants cross this thing. I mean, we're talking open water. Yes, it's a narrow strait, but this is still open water. This is still seawater. This is not just some sort of, small river or lake or anything like that. So this defensive alliance of Greek states, headed by Sparta and Athens, it's sort of thrown together. There's no real big-time organization to it, and not all of these Greek city-states have a long history of getting along. Many of them have different governments. Athens is sort of in the lead here with this ideas of democracy, but a lot of Spartans and a lot of other Greek city-states are still practicing oligarchy. So there's really not a whole lot of unity. The only unity that they really have at this moment is the fact that they don't want Persia to take over. That's about it. With all this chaos going on and the fact that they sort of have to throw a battle plan together in a rapid amount of time, you have King Leonidas of Sparta. He's one of the elected kings of Sparta, along with his personal bodyguards of 300 Spartan soldiers, go to the Thermopylae Pass, the famed, pass in the movie 300. It was actually there. It's a very narrow passageway that is going to make this extremely large Persian expedition very, very small, because they can only pass through a very narrow corridor of land. It's like asking an entire classroom of students to pass through the doorway all at the same time. It's just not going to work. They're going to fall flat on their face. So you take a very large army You use the natural geographic factors around you to make them into a small army. Now, some estimates put it at 200,000 soldiers, but what we do know is that while they're crossing the Hellespont and they're going through northern Greece by land, and Leonidas and the Spartan soldiers are going to try and head them off at that Thermopylae Pass, he's also sending 1,000 ships. So the fact that Themistocles knew this was a temporary victory and encouraging Athens to build up his fleet is just in the nick of time. Really, for the first time in Greek history, you have this large confederation of various independent city-states that are able to organize at least enough to cooperate to attack Persia. Now, while at the Thermopylae Pass, all of these confederation of Greek city-states are trying to organize, they're trying to get their stuff together, and Leonidas realizes that if Greece, and Sparta, his homeland as well, is going to have a fighting chance, that they have to at least stall the Persian advance by land as long as possible. Even though the Athenian navy that is built and the overall Greek navy is much smaller than the Persian navy, the Persians still have to come on land if they're going to take any of these city-states. So, greatly outnumbered. You have the 300 Spartan soldiers, not nearly as many recorded, or as often recorded. But you have about 700, anywhere up to, I think some historians estimate up to 1,200 Thespians from the city-state of Thespia, who volunteer and stay and fight with the Spartans and ultimately lose their lives. Some say, depending on the accounts, this army is over 1 million strong. Some say estimates more or less 200,000. But still, you're looking at maybe 1,500 Greeks versus 200,000 Persians, and they're able to hold them off long enough to try and gather some forces, particularly Themistocles, head of the Athenian navy, as they are going to attempt to halt any sort of Persian advance by sea. As you can see here on this map, here is Thermopylae. They've marched across the Hellespont here, all the way around through these allied areas, and that's where they're going to run into these problems. But if you look to the south, and you can see how many important Greek city-states are to the south of this area. You have Delphi, location of one of the most famous oracles of the area. You have Athens, you have Marathon, Eretria, Plateau, and of course the Corinthians and the Spartans as well on the Peloponnesus. So Thermopylae is very important. The fact that this Persian advance is halted somewhat and at least given, not a crushing blow by any stretch of the imagination, but at least halted for the time being, is going to help. Doesn't help as much, because when you see what happens to Athens, you'll know what I'm talking about. Ultimately, the Persians, Xerxes' forces, are able to march south after this Battle of Thermopylae. They destroyed the city of Athens. It is burnt to the ground. Athens is in ashes, which ultimately was Xerxes' main motivation. Remember, this is Darius' son. His main goal in fighting this war, which ultimately goes into that overriding question that I asked you at the beginning of this presentation, his overriding goal was to see Athens burned to the ground. And he did. Now, does this fit into the mold of what Persians are going to do next? Because ultimately they're not going to be able to stay in Greece. They're eventually going to withdraw from this area. So it's a toss-up. The fact that he does burn Athens to the ground definitely says, yes, this was his main motivation. He's after revenge. He gets his revenge. But ultimately, if that's all he wanted, why did he stay? Okay? So that overriding question is a difficult one to answer. You couple that with the fact that the Athenians knew what was going to happen. They knew that these Spartans were not going to be successful at the Battle of Thermopylae, so they had already moved to Salamis, which is a small nearby island. Now, Themistocles is in charge of the navy at Salamis. More than 800 Persian ships are going to attack at that area, and it's actually going to be, even though they're greatly outnumbered, I think 3-to-1 as far as Persian ships versus the Athenian triremes. They are going to be overall successful. They are going to definitely strike a blow to the Persian naval fleet. Themistocles does this because, well, he's not stupid. He waits until it's almost dark to attack. That way, you know what, if the battle's not going well, you can't exactly fight in the dark. In the ancient world, it's like they can throw spotlights on each other. The goal here of these battles is to ram your trireme into your opponent's bow and disable it, and then go on board. You can burn it, do whatever you want to. Overall, this battle tactic is successful. The Athenian ships, the triremes, are able to decimate the Persian fleet. The triremes, despite the fact that there were fewer of them than the Persian ships, had better maneuverability. They're able to ram into them, and they're able to ultimately win at Salamis. So you can see here at this little map here of the Battle of Salamis, you have just before dusk, they sail out, they start ramming these ships, and then they quickly retreat, and they are able to win. The Greeks try to go on the offensive here. Now, when we say the Greek offensive, what it really is, guys, is it's a period of harassment by the Greeks. Not necessarily battle after battle after battle after battle, but what they're doing is if you were to compare it today, it would almost be guerrilla war tactics, where they're able to stall, where they're able to try and disrupt this very large army. Remember, the Persians are far away from home. They burned Athens to the ground. And remember, the geography of Greece, it's not like there's just field after field after field of a variety of crops and large amounts of cattle or anything. Just to feed this army, to keep the supply lines going to this army, it gets to the point where it's almost not worth staying in Greece and annexing this territory because of the constant badgering of the Greeks to the Persians. The Battle of Plateau and Mycale are very important. The Battle of Plateau is sort of the last death nail in the idea that the Persians are going to stay there and set up Greece as either a satrapy or a colony or a controlled area of any kind for any sort of long-term ideas. The Ionians themselves back in Anatolia are going to stage a rebellion against Persia, so Persia has problems within itself. The Athenians capture Sestos, an area of Persian control, and there is the founding of the Delian Confederacy, or the Delian League, as it is commonly referred to, which is more of a set alliance between these Greek city-states to continue fighting. So ultimately what we get there after the Battle of Plateau is a Persian withdrawal. Yes, they are suffering a few defeats along the way, but it is a conscientious decision by Xerxes and his forces and his army commanders to go ahead and leave. They do not feel that that Greece is worth the trouble, okay? Even though its strategic position in the Mediterranean, even though it has a lot of trade, it's not there. Remember, Xerxes' main motivation was to burn Athens to the ground. He did that. So this overriding question, was the Second Persian War a Greek or Persian victory? Well, it would be something you have to weigh the evidence against, maybe in an essay. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.